In this episode, we will dive into two mind-bending criminal cases, exposing an exceptionally unique criminal psychology unlike anything we've encountered before. On the morning of June 29, 2013, the 119 Emergency Rescue Team in Incheon, Seoul, received a distress call and rushed to a single-room apartment in Yeonsu District. Upon entering, the rescue team found a woman sitting dazed next to the bed. Not far away, in the bathroom, a young man lay naked on the floor, his body covered in severe burns. Beside him, another man was desperately performing CPR, but it was too late. After examining him, the rescue team confirmed that the young man had no signs of life and pronounced him dead at the scene. The deceased was identified as Jeon Min-kui, a 17-year-old high school student. His body was covered in burns and bruises, with the burns classified as second degree. The cause of death was determined to be septicemia, blood poisoning, due to severe burns. However, there was something unusual. Burn injuries this severe are typically seen in fire-related incidents, yet there were no signs of a fire anywhere in the apartment. Instead, the walls were stained with blood. Where did the blood come from? How did Min-kui's body end up covered in burns? If he had been suffering from such extreme injuries, why didn't he seek medical attention? And what was the relationship between the man and woman in the apartment to his death? The police investigation revealed that the 29-year-old woman, identified as Lee, was the tenant of the apartment. She claimed to be Min-kui's private tutor and said that after Min-kui dropped out of high school, he moved in with her for intensive training in preparation for his college entrance exams through self-study. She admitted that in the early morning 2 days before the incident, during a tutoring session, Min-kui suddenly developed inappropriate intentions and attempted to sexually assault her. At the time, there were 2 kettles of boiling water on the stove for making tea, and in self-defense, she threw the boiling water at him. However, even that did not stop him, so she grabbed a nearby golf club to defend herself, which she claimed explained the bloodstains on the wall. Lee deliberately provided the police with a video recorded after the incident as evidence. In the video, she was sitting on the floor in her underwear, crying continuously, saying, "If I hadn't hit him, I would have died. I was almost raped." The camera then shifted to Min-kui, who was standing awkwardly in only his underwear, hesitantly saying, "I didn't take her clothes off. I was attacked." Lee stated that the video was recorded by an acquaintance named Anne, who had come to protect her. On the day Min-kui died, it was Anne who performed CPR on him. After watching the video, the police still found several suspicious points. First, Lee's tone in the video seemed unnatural, showing clear signs of acting. Moreover, in such an urgent situation, if she had grabbed a pot of boiling water from the stove, why didn't her hands have any burns? Second, the bloodstains on the walls varied in darkness, indicating that they were not all created on the same day. Third, Min-kui's injuries were at different stages of healing, with newer wounds overlapping older ones. It appeared that he had suffered continuous and prolonged abuse. From this, it was clear that at the time of Min-kui's death, Lee was deliberately hiding something, raising serious suspicions. However, what puzzled the police even more was the origin of this situation, how Min-kui and Lee ended up living together. Even if the reason was to focus on exam preparation under intensive tutoring, it was highly unusual for an adult woman to live with an underage male in a small one-room apartment without any concern. No matter how one looked at it, their relationship did not seem like a purely student-teacher dynamic. What made it even more puzzling was that Min-kui was nearly 5 feet 11 inches tall and weighed around 220 pounds, with a strong and sturdy build, while Lee was only about 5 feet 3 inches. It was nearly impossible for her to physically overpower him alone. So why didn't Min-kui resist when she threw boiling water at him and struck him with a golf club? What was the true nature of their relationship? Min-kui and Lee's acquaintance could be traced back to a year earlier. In 2012, Lee was a fourth-year education major at a university in Gangneung. She began her teaching internship at a middle school in Gangneung, where she was assigned to a freshman class that included Min Kui. He was an athletic student who had enjoyed sports since childhood and dreamed of becoming a security officer, but his academic performance had always been poor. When Lee started her internship, she frequently tutored Min Kui after school, and his grades quickly improved. Because of this, his parents deeply trusted and appreciated Lee. However, not long after, Min Kui's attitude suddenly changed. He told his parents that he wanted to drop out of school and take the independent study exam in August instead. His reasoning was that he frequently had to train, which made him sweat, leading to him being ostracized by his peers. His parents strongly opposed the decision and urged him to reconsider, but Min Kui was adamant and refused to back down. At this point, Lee had completed her internship and proposed a compromise to Min Kui's parents. She offered to tutor him for free and help him pass the independent study exam as long as he moved to her place in Incheon for focused training. Min Kui's parents were deeply concerned about their underage son living alone in an unfamiliar city, but seeing his determination and realizing they could not stop him, they reluctantly agreed. And so, Min Kui packed his belongings and moved into Lee's home. He even claimed that revealing his address would be a distraction to his studies and refused to tell his parents exactly where he was living. Instead, he only asked them to send money at the agreed time every month. His parents naturally assumed he had his own room, completely unaware that he and Lee were actually sharing a single-room apartment. 4 months after Min Kui left home, on June 27th, his parents unexpectedly received a call from Lee. On the phone, she abruptly said, "Your son tried to sexually assault me," then quickly hung up. His parents didn't understand what was happening and anxiously contacted their son to ask what had occurred. However, 4 hours later, when they finally reached Min Kui, he said something that shocked them completely. "Dad, I did it because I have feelings for the teacher. Dad, can you help me talk to her?" In addition to feeling shocked, Min Kui's parents also noticed something strange. On the phone, Min Kui was stuttering, his tone unlike their normal calls, not calm, but full of fear. Had their son really acted inappropriately due to impulse? Or was there something hidden in this story? Min Kui's parents certainly couldn't believe it, but before they could take action 2 days later, they received even more devastating news. Their son had died in the tutor's home. After investigating the case, the police quickly discovered that the sexual assault evidence video provided by Lee had many suspicious points. They determined that the video alleging sexual assault was very likely staged, so they immediately arrested Lee and summoned Anne for questioning. After recovering the message exchanges on their phones from before and after the incident, the police discovered some shocking content. All the messages were related to a new character, and this person's appearance opened up a new angle for the case. June 25th. Kim messaged Anne, "Go find Min Kui." Anne replied, "How can he go home after being splashed with hot water? We'll definitely be arrested. That bastard Lee is almost passed out." Kim, "Go to the single room to check the situation. They're fighting and arguing. Everything's chaotic. He's about to die now. Are you mentally ill? Why aren't you hitting him? Watch and throw water on him. Use really hot water. If you don't splash him with water, at least hit him. You need to give him severe burns." Police deduced from the message content that the first time Lee splashed Min Kui with hot water wasn't at dawn on the 27th as she claimed, but around 3 p.m. 2 days earlier on the 25th. And Anne, who was familiar with video recording, not only helped fabricate evidence, but also participated in abusing and beating Min Kui. Behind their actions were all directions from someone named Kim. While Lee was actually the tutor, where did this Kim appear from? Why was this person continuously receiving reports about Min Kui's studies? And what was even more puzzling was that when Min Kui showed slight disobedience, Kim immediately ordered Lee and Anne to punish him. What kind of relationship did this person have with the student? Upon investigation, police discovered that Kim is 29 years old, was Lee's high school classmate, and they also graduated from the same teacher's college. They even interned at the same high school, Min Kui's school. In others' eyes, they were inseparable friends. Kim and Ann had previously been in a romantic relationship. During the investigation of Kim, police received shocking information from Min Kui's classmate. Although Min Kui and Lee lived together, the person actually dating him was Kim. How could an intern teacher and a high school student with a 12-year age gap be dating at school? According to accounts, since Lee and Kim came to the high school, Min Kui had liked Kim. Lee and Min Kui had an agreement. If his academic performance improved, she would introduce him to Kim. The young Min Kui studied diligently for this reason and made it into the top 10 of his class. Lee kept her promise, and Min Kui got his wish, quickly becoming close with Kim. After spending time together, the two actually started dating. Min Kui even changed his messaging app profile picture to Kim's photo and kept Kim's picture in his wallet. Rumors about their relationship quickly spread throughout the school, and there were even rumors that they had a sexual relationship. After learning this, police immediately summoned Kim, but she denied all suspicions and insisted she wasn't dating Min Kui and didn't even know he liked her. As for Lee, after her lies were exposed, she admitted that the video was staged and said she punished Min Kui because he wouldn't study seriously, claiming none of this had anything to do with Kim. Although all evidence pointed to Kim, Lee still tried to take all the blame herself, as if they had coordinated their testimonies, making people even more suspicious. But they couldn't maintain their position for long, as police quickly found deleted messages on Kim's phone and gradually reconstructed the truth of the case. The rumors weren't unfounded. In the messages between Kim and Min Kui, there were plenty of intimate terms like dear husband, honey, and other terms of endearment. The two were enjoying a relationship that violated ethical boundaries within the school campus. But the good times did not last. Facing the upcoming teacher recruitment exam, Kim panicked as news spread quickly. If word about her relationship with an underage high school student reached the Department of Education, she wouldn't just face disciplinary action, she could permanently lose her chance of being hired. After completing her internship, Kim returned to her hometown in Incheon. She was anxious that if Min Kui stayed alone in Gangneung, he might reveal their relationship, making her feel extremely uneasy. Eventually, she came up with a plan to make Min Kui drop out of school and have Lee tutor him for the college entrance exam. On the surface, it seemed like an academic arrangement, but in reality, it was a way to keep him under surveillance, ensuring he wouldn't act recklessly. So, how did Kim do it? First, she pretended to be her own uncle and sent messages to Min Kui, lying that after their relationship was exposed, Kim had suffered immensely and even developed a mental illness. She told him that only he could save her. Kim continuously manipulated Min Kui psychologically, making him feel extreme guilt, convincing him that he had ruined the life of the woman he deeply loved. Under her step-by-step influence, Min Kui made the decision to drop out of school, move to Incheon, and start living with Lee for tutoring, all while holding on to the hope of a future with Kim. However, by this time, Kim had already found a new boyfriend. Min Kui arrived in Incheon with excitement and anticipation, only to realize that not only was it difficult to see Kim, but his living conditions were far from what he had expected. Before long, he grew frustrated with the intense study schedule and wanted to go home. To maintain control over him, Kim began instructing Lee and Ann to punish him, forcing him to continue studying. As the college entrance exam approached with only a few months left, the punishments escalated. Lee expressed concerns to Kim about the excessive physical discipline, but Kim replied, "When I used to hit him with a belt, he would bleed. Just tell him I'll come over and he'll be terrified," reassuring Lee not to worry. Under Kim's orders, Lee's punishments toward Min Kui became increasingly severe. She repeatedly poured boiling water over his body and ignored his pain. 4 days after suffering extensive burns, Min Kui stopped breathing due to a lack of timely medical treatment. The full picture of the story finally came together, but some puzzling questions remained. First, Min Kui was an athletic student who regularly trained in Taekwondo, physically strong and capable of defending himself. Why, despite being subjected to such extreme abuse by 3 people, did he never attempt to escape or return home to seek help from his parents? The forensic psychologist assigned to the case explained that in order to maintain better control over Min Kui, Kim had arranged for an adult male, her ex-boyfriend An, to apply additional pressure on him. At the same time, she continuously manipulated him psychologically. Kim wrote in a message to Min Kui, "You said you want to go home, and that makes me really sad. I feel like I can't go on anymore. If you have even a little love for me, please focus on studying. After you get into college, we'll live together in Incheon." Through a combination of physical and psychological control, Min Kui, a teenager with an immature mind, had been completely brainwashed. He fell into a state of helplessness, unable to break free from his situation, losing both his ability to resist and his capacity for independent thinking. Another suspicious point was Lee's behavior. She and Min Kui had no special relationship, and tutoring him provided no benefits to her. On the contrary, it caused her inconvenience by having to live with him. So why was she so invested in his academic performance and willing to collaborate with Kim in such brutal abuse? Even from the beginning of the investigation, she insisted that she acted alone. According to people who knew her, Lee had an introverted personality and had only one close friend since high school, Kim. She imitated Kim's fashion style and way of speaking, and even chose to enroll in the same teacher's college just to study alongside Kim. This demonstrated an extreme, almost pathological dependence. Their relationship was less of an equal friendship and more like a superior-subordinate dynamic, with Kim giving orders and Lee following them. During the investigation, the police discovered that Lee was not only being controlled by Kim, but also by another mysterious figure named A Yuan. Every time before and after Lee abused Min Kui, she received text instructions from A Yuan. One day before Lee poured boiling water on Min Kui, on June 24th, she received a message from A Yuan that read, "You haven't been properly supervising Min Kui's studies, and you haven't been following Kim and An's orders. Because of this, the gangsters have harmed your mother. She is in the hospital now." So who was this A Yuan? How was Min Kui's lack of studying connected to gangsters? And why did Lee trust and obey him so unquestioningly? According to the investigation, A Yuan had been Lee's boyfriend for 4 years. They met in 2009 through Kim's introduction. He was Lee's first love, and she was obsessively devoted to him, to the point of blind obedience. He once mentioned that he liked chubby girls, so Lee deliberately ate more to gain weight and even sent him progress photos as proof. While Lee was living with and tutoring Min Kui, every time she thought about giving up, A Yuan would manipulate her by saying, "The gangsters will harm you and your family," to pressure her into obeying Kim's instructions. What was even more shocking was that despite Lee's deep love for A Yuan, in their 4 years together, they had never met in person or even spoken on the phone. Their communication was exclusively through text messages and pictures. Lee believed that A Yuan was studying abroad in the United States and was too busy to meet. However, they communicated almost daily, and she never doubted their relationship. After police traced A Yuan's communication records, they discovered that his true identity was none other than Kim herself. For 4 years, Kim had used a secondary SIM card to fabricate an imaginary persona. Since Kim knew Lee inside and out, creating the perfect ideal man for her was effortless. Through carefully crafted messages, Kim gradually led Lee into falling in love with A Yuan. Through a process of psychological manipulation and brainwashing, she ensured Lee's loyalty to A Yuan reached its peak. Terrified of losing this love, Lee unquestioningly obeyed every command Kim issued through A Yuan. Kim used this fictional character as a tool to completely control and brainwash Lee. This explains why, in the early stages of the investigation, Lee adamantly insisted that all her actions were entirely her own and had nothing to do with anyone else. Even after the police revealed A Yuan's true identity, she initially refused to believe it. Psychologists analyzing the case concluded that both Lee and Kim exhibited certain personality disorders. Lee suffered from dependent personality disorder, while Kim had narcissistic personality disorder. These two disorders complemented each other, forming a toxic, codependent dynamic. For Lee, her relationship with Kim was her only connection to the outside world. Meanwhile, for Kim, she was like a queen bee who constantly needed drones orbiting around her. Lee, her ex-boyfriend Anne, and the high school student Min Kwai were all just drones in her hive. To maintain her queen bee status and fulfill her need for control, Kim created a unique system of rewards and punishments. This system could be based on money, power, or emotional manipulation. To achieve this, she fabricated the character of A. Yuan, using sweet deception to keep Lee under her control. Eventually, faced with undeniable evidence, Lee slowly came to accept the truth, that A. Yuan had never existed. In the initial trial, she admitted that she had followed Kim's instructions to abuse Min Kui and falsely claimed that he had tried to assault her, even staging a fake video as proof. Kim and Anne, as accomplices in the Inchin tutoring murder case, were arrested and additionally charged in July 2014. On September 24, 2014, the Supreme Court sentenced Lee, who was charged with inflicting injuries leading to death, to 7 years in prison. Kim and Anne, the accomplices, received sentences of 2 years and 8 months, respectively. You might be just as shocked as I was upon seeing these sentences. Why were they so light? Let's see what the court had to say. The judge stated that Defendant Lee, citing poor academic performance, abused the victim for 2 months, failed to take him to the hospital despite his severe burns, and even falsely accused him of sexual violence in an attempt to fabricate evidence. However, considering that she had no prior criminal record and had shown remorse, the court sentenced her to 7 years in prison. Although accomplices Kim and Anne participated in the crime, their acts of violence were not considered the direct cause of the victim's death, so they were sentenced to 2 years and 8 months, respectively. After the ruling, the case drew massive public attention. People condemned the court's decision, arguing that the sentences were too lenient. In this case, Kim, the mastermind and the one with the most malicious influence, was sentenced to only 2 years. Now, more than 10 years have passed. Lee and Kim have long been released from prison. They have erased the traces of their past and are now living completely normal lives. But what about Min Kui? A life full of potential was permanently cut short at the age of 17. The torture and suffering he endured in his final 4 months, along with the grief and despair his death left behind for his family, can never be erased. This concludes the first story of today. Now let's move on to the second case. On March 7, 2008, at 11:15 a.m., the Hong Kong 999 Emergency Control Center received a crime report call. On the other end of the line was a man. He calmly said, "I killed someone." His overly composed tone made it hard for the dispatcher to believe. They immediately asked for confirmation multiple times. "Are you sure about what you're saying?" The man reaffirmed, "Yes, I killed my ex-girlfriend." He then provided his full name and address, stating that he would put down his weapon and cooperate with the police. For the emergency response team, a criminal so calm and turning himself in over the phone was unheard of. Although skeptical, the dispatcher immediately alerted the authorities. Shortly after, armed police officers with shields, along with paramedics, were dispatched to the scene. During this time, another crime report was made. This time, the caller was a young woman named Zheng Xiaoru. She reported that a man had called, claiming he had committed a murder. The address she provided was 2206 Shijialu, Stonela Village, Guiqing District, New Territories, Hong Kong. Coincidentally, the dispatcher noticed that this was the exact same address given by the previous caller. It seemed certain that a murder had taken place. When police arrived, everything outside the apartment appeared normal, and there were no unusual sounds coming from within. After knocking on the door and announcing themselves, a blood-soaked man opened the door. He remained eerily composed. After letting the officers in, he calmly turned around and sat on the sofa in the living room. Following his gaze, a gruesome scene unfolded before the officers. The entire living room, including the walls, floor, and furniture, was covered in blood. Lying on the floor next to the sofa was a woman's body, partially covered by a coat over her upper torso. It was clear that she was wearing a white blouse and dark jeans. The most horrifying sight was that between her left arm and hip, a severed head had been placed deliberately. Forensic examination revealed that the victim had sustained 66 stab wounds across her body, with 15 wounds concentrated near her heart. The injuries had penetrated her heart and lungs. From the evidence, it appeared she was attacked while standing, collapsed due to blood loss, and was then fatally wounded. The weapons found at the scene were 2 knives, one large and one small, both stained with the victim's blood. Such brutal violence was truly chilling. Investigators identified the victim as Li Ruiyi, 19 years old. The killer was her 25-year-old ex-boyfriend, Liang Bai-ming. Murder cases generally fall into 3 main categories: murder out of hatred, murder for financial gain, and murder for love. Of these, murder for love is perhaps the most chilling, as it is committed in the name of affection. If one finds the right partner, 1 + 1 is greater than 2. But when love turns toxic, at best, it leads to heartbreak. At worst, it ends in tragedy. Now let's take a closer look at the romantic relationship between this couple and how it ultimately led to tragedy. Ruiyi was born in 1989, the youngest of 3 sisters. In 2000, she and her family moved into the apartment where the crime later took place. After her eldest sister got married and moved out, her second sister's boyfriend moved in. Ruiyi had exceptional athletic talent. In 2002, when she was in 8th grade, she became a swimmer for her school's team. She later competed in an inter-school swimming competition and won an award. The following year, she was promoted to team captain and won the women's 50-meter freestyle championship. In addition, she excelled in cross-country running, representing her school in inter-school competitions and securing 8th place in the team category. To her teachers and parents, Ruiyi was a source of great pride. After graduating from middle school, Ruiyi enrolled in a club management program. In March 2007, her school assigned her to an internship at Hao Xingbei Club, where she also worked as a part-time swimming coach. It was here that this lively, athletic young woman met the nightmare of her life, Liang. Liang was an assistant at the club, working while studying. Ruiyi's cheerful and energetic personality quickly caught his attention. Not only did he mentor and guide her at work, but he also pursued her relentlessly. Liang was born in Hong Kong and was 7 years older than Ruiyi. His family also consisted of 3 siblings. His parents had worked in public relations in Macau, but they were later imprisoned at Stanley Prison for robbery. As a child, his mother took him to visit his father in prison, telling him that his father worked there. It wasn't until he grew older and was teased by his peers as the son of a prisoner that he finally understood the truth. His father wasn't an employee, he was an inmate. By the time Liang reached high school, his father had been released and moved to mainland China for work, while Liang, his mother, and his younger siblings remained in Hong Kong. Amid these circumstances, in 2003, his mother was diagnosed with depression. After graduating from high school, Liang worked various jobs, including warehouse manager, waiter, club assistant, and other roles. Passionate about sports, he obtained a personal trainer certification and later completed Muay Thai coaching and sports management courses. Perhaps because of their shared interest in sports, Ruiyi also developed feelings for Liang. Before long, the two began dating. Just 1 month after meeting, Ruiyi moved in with Liang. At first, their relationship seemed inseparable. Liang Bai-ming pampered his girlfriend, handing over his entire income for her to manage. He even paid for her to take a lifeguard training course. At home, because Ruiyi often acted playfully, Liang would carry her to the bathroom in front of his own mother. Ruiyi also showed her love in return, knitting scarves for her boyfriend. In reality, Liang had been in relationships since high school. Ruiyi was his 4th girlfriend. He had been the one to break up with all 3 of his previous partners, and the most recent breakup was because he had met Ruiyi. According to those around him, Ruiyi was the one he loved the most. However, despite sharing similar interests, their personalities were completely different. Ruiyi was lively, outgoing, and had many male friends, whereas Liang was introverted, quiet, and had a strong tendency to control his partner. 1 month after moving in together, Ruiyi made plans to go out with a male friend. That evening, she called Liang and told him she was planning to stay out all night, go boating the next day, and wouldn't be coming home that night. Liang was extremely unhappy about this and insisted that she come home. But when she refused, he threatened to kill himself at home. This alarmed Ruiyi, and she rushed back, calling the police to take him to the hospital. After this incident, Liang became increasingly anxious about losing Ruiyi and began exerting even more control over her. He frequently checked her phone, scrutinized her call logs and messages, and questioned her about any suspicious interactions. Ruiyi found this suffocating and, at times, would deliberately send flirty messages to other men just to provoke him. Their constant arguments escalated, and their relationship quickly deteriorated. For 7 to 8 months, their relationship continued with ongoing conflicts. On February 12, 2008, Ruiyi made plans to go karaoke with her female colleague, Xiao Ru. Since Zheng Xiaoru was also a woman, Liang didn't think much of it. However, by chance, some of Zheng Xiaoru's friends brought along their own friends, and that was how Ruiyi met a 25-year-old chef named Wen. The next day, Liang Baiming received a call from Xiaoru. She told him that she couldn't stand it anymore and warned Liang that his girlfriend might be falling for someone else. She even sent Wen's phone number to Liang, suggesting that he send a warning message. However, Wen never responded. So, Liang turned to Ruiyi and started questioning her. Ruiyi was furious at his interference, believing that he was trying to control her personal freedom. As a result, she began texting Wen more frequently on purpose. 1 week later, Liang became increasingly anxious and suggested breaking up with Ruiyi himself. Ruiyi agreed immediately, without hesitation. However, just 1 day later, Liang regretted his decision. He repeatedly apologized and begged to reconcile, but Ruiyi was determined not to go back. On February 20th, Ruiyi moved back home. Once she returned to her single life, Wen officially pursued her, and the two quickly became a couple. On February 24th, Liang texted Ruiyi, telling her that he couldn't accept the way their relationship ended. Ruiyi responded that she didn't want to see him spiral downward, and hoped he would stop doing foolish things. From 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. on February 25th, Liang called Ruiyi every few minutes, totaling 26 calls, but most went to voicemail. Then, Liang resorted to extreme measures. He swallowed 100 painkillers in his room and cut the tendons and nerves in his left hand. After waking up at 6 a.m., he cut his wrist again, severing his veins. By noon, his mother sensed something was wrong, used a key to unlock his room, and rushed him to the hospital for emergency treatment. Liang nearly died but was saved. During his 10 days in the hospital, he continuously sent affectionate messages to Ruiyi, but she never responded or showed any concern about his hospitalization. Worried about her son, Liang's mother removed all sharp objects from their home. Due to his extreme actions, Liang lost his job after being discharged from the hospital. However, he didn't seem to care. His only focus was getting back together with Ruiyi. Liang hoped she would at least talk to him on the phone, but she refused. However, Ruiyi still tried to console him through text, saying, "Don't do anything foolish. Even if you do, we still can't be together. I'd rather you go kill someone else than watch you hurt yourself. If you go to prison, at least your mother will know her son is still alive. You care too much about getting a response from me. I will never be with you." Unfortunately, Ruiyi's words did nothing to make Liang Baiming let go of his obsession. Even more terrifying, he failed to realize that her statement had planted the idea of shifting his anger onto her. On March 5th, Liang attended a criminology psychology class at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. After class, he sent 21 messages to Ruiyi. At first, they were filled with concern and affection, but as she continued to ignore him, he became increasingly impatient. His tone shifted from warm and caring to hostile and threatening. He began blaming Ruiyi for pushing him to this state, accusing her of using him and then dumping him, and demanding she pay him back for all the money he had spent on her while they were together. That evening, Liang went to Ruiyi's workplace and waited for her shift to end. When she got off work, they had a heated argument. In addition to demanding she return the phone he had gifted her and his house key, Liang insisted that she reimburse him for living expenses and personal allowances during their time together, totaling 12,000 Hong Kong dollars. Rui Yi gave Liang all the 3,000 Hong Kong dollars she had and told him she would pay the remaining 9,000 Hong Kong dollars in installments. At that moment, Liang didn't push further. He thought it was a good excuse to see her a few more times. After returning home, Rui Yi told her second sister and her new boyfriend about what had happened. Her sister's boyfriend then called Liang, demanding that he stop harassing Rui Yi and telling him, "When two people are together, you shouldn't keep track of every little expense. If you're breaking up, then just do it peacefully." But Liang refused to listen and insisted that he wanted his money back. He even threatened them, saying, "I've already lost my hand and my life. What do I have to be afraid of anymore?" Realizing the implicit threat in Liang's words, Rui Yi's sister's boyfriend feared that he might do something drastic. He took Rui Yi to the police station to report the situation. However, the police classified the case as a low-risk domestic dispute and only recorded it without taking action. On March 6th, Liang's attitude suddenly changed. He sent Rui Yi a message apologizing and saying that the time they spent together was the happiest of his life. He claimed that everything he did was out of love and fear of losing her. He also said he hoped Rui Yi could return to her true self and that they could be friends in the future. Rui Yi ignored his messages. That night, Liang went to a sporting goods store and purchased a survival knife and a short-bladed combat knife. Early the next morning, Liang wrote a letter, leaving behind the contact number of his insurance company. He also left 8,000 Hong Kong dollars in his room for his mother, and with one last hope sent a message to Rui Yi. "I can't lose you. Please don't treat me like this." But once again he received no response. At 8 a.m., Liang Baiming, with his left hand bandaged from his previous injury and his right hand gripping a concealed knife, appeared outside Rui Yi's apartment building. Half an hour later, Rui Yi's second sister and her boyfriend left for work and happened to see him. They asked what he was doing there. Liang lied, saying he had come to return some clothes. Concerned that her sister might be alone at home and could be harassed, the second sister offered to take the clothes upstairs for him and even invited him to share a taxi. But Liang refused. After watching Rui Yi's sister and her boyfriend leave in a taxi, Liang entered the building. The sister, still worried, called Rui Yi from the car to warn her to be careful. Standing outside Rui Yi's apartment, Liang hid and waited for her to leave for work. At 10:50 a.m., when Rui Yi opened the door, he suddenly pushed her back inside. Once inside, Liang repeatedly asked if she still loved him, and once again begged her to take him back. But Rui Yi firmly refused. She told him, "No one likes someone as extreme as you," and declared that she had a new boyfriend. Liang tried to hug Rui Yi, but she fought back aggressively and threatened to call the police if he didn't leave immediately. Taking advantage of a moment when Rui Yi turned her back, Liang, in utter desperation, pulled out the knife and stabbed her. Even as Rui Yi pleaded for her life, Liang did not stop. He killed her in a fit of madness. In the end, he kissed her severed head as a final goodbye. After everything was done, Liang Baiming placed his letter and identification documents in Rui Yi's room, then considered jumping off the building. But at that moment, he remembered Rui Yi's past words. "If you have to do something, at least go to prison. That way your mother will know her son is still alive." He abandoned his suicide attempt. At that moment, Xiao Ru happened to call him. Liang calmly told her what had happened. At first, Xiao Ru thought he was joking, so she asked, "Do you know what happens when you kill someone?" Liang replied, "You go to prison." That was when Xiao Ru realized the situation was serious and called the police as Liang requested. After hanging up, Liang himself also called the police. Then, he called his mother and said, "I did something wrong. Your legs are weak, so don't go anywhere." He then stayed in the apartment and waited for the police to arrive. After being arrested, Liang fully admitted to his crime. He confessed, "I wore a wrist guard so I could stab more forcefully," and admitted that he had planned the murder since March 6th. He believed that Rui Yi's previous words, "I'd rather you kill someone else than watch you kill yourself," were meant to suggest that he should kill her. On April 15th, 2009, the case was heard at the High Court of Hong Kong. Liang sat in the defendant's chair with a blank expression. Before the trial, through his lawyer, he pleaded guilty to manslaughter, claiming he had lost his mind at the time of the crime. However, based on the evidence, the prosecution argued that Liang only suffered from adjustment disorder due to emotional distress, not insanity, and that his ability to judge right from wrong had not been impaired during the crime. During the trial, Liang's lawyer argued that on March 7th, he did not seek out Rui Yi to harm her but only intended to scare her. If she refused to take him back, he planned to commit suicide. However, during their conversation, Rui Yi allegedly insulted him, calling him a cripple with no job, saying he was not a real man. Under this provocation, he lost control of his emotions and attacked her. Regarding his previous statements to the police, Liang claimed that he was in a state of despair at the time. He said he only admitted to premeditation because he assumed he would be charged with murder anyway. In reality, he carried the survival knife simply because it was one of his favorite items. When questioned by his lawyer, Liang stated that when he pulled out the knife and pointed it at Rui Yi, his real intention was to commit suicide in front of her to scare her into staying with him. He admitted that this thinking was irrational, but claimed that at the time, it felt like the only option. Throughout the trial, Liang remained composed. When asked to recount the details of the crime, he said he did not want to remember what happened that day. However, when the court placed the two knives in front of him, it was the only moment he lost control, breaking down emotionally in distress. The prosecution dismissed Liang's defense as an attempt to shift all the blame onto the victim to protect himself. In the 2 weeks leading up to her death, Rui Yi had never insulted Liang in her messages, so it was highly unlikely that she would suddenly provoke a knife-wielding ex-boyfriend on the day of the crime. Furthermore, the sheer brutality of Liang's actions proved that his attack was not a momentary loss of control. When giving his statement at the police station, he was calm, clear-headed, and showed no signs of fear. He fully understood the officer's questions and was not, as he later claimed, unable to remember the murder process. This proves that his initial statement was truthful and accurate. On April 23rd, both the prosecution and the defense concluded their arguments. The following day, after 4 hours of deliberation, the 7-member jury, 5 women and 2 men, unanimously found Liang guilty of murder. The judge condemned him for his cruelty and horrific actions and sentenced him to life in prison. Liang's lawyer and mother were both shocked by the verdict. His mother, in her 50s, attended every court session despite her son asking her not to be present during his defense statement. She insisted, "I want to support my son emotionally." This tragic relationship ended in disaster. Liang's mother admitted that her son was at fault, but argued that love is irrational. She also emphasized that after committing the crime, the first thing he did was call her and say, "I did something wrong." In her view, no matter who was to blame, the tragedy had already happened, and both families had suffered immensely. Regardless of the outcome, she was determined to appeal for her son. When asked about Rui Yi's belongings still at their home, Liang's mother said she would not throw them away and would wait to see if her family wanted them back. On April 28, 2010, Liang's appeal was rejected, officially closing the case. In reality, relationships are a normal part of life, but when faced with a dangerous partner, how can one safely leave? Rui Yi did everything she could to break free but was unable to escape, ultimately leading to tragedy. Perhaps the best approach is to recognize warning signs before committing to a relationship. But if it's already too late and breaking up safely becomes a concern, seeking guidance from professionals may be the best solution, tailored to the specific behavior of the other person. That concludes today's story. Ultimately, we hope that everyone finds love and experiences the beauty of life. Thank you for your support, and see you next time.